Hi everybody, happy Friday. Quick video on how to use the Law Hero notes. I actually have printed my Law Hero contract notes to try and explain to people how my notes actually work and how they will make you get a very high result. So because the FE1 is a relatively short exam, it's 3 hours and there's 5 questions. That makes the number of topics you have to learn wide and the depth short. So you have to think wide and short, whereas in PPC1, PPC2, you have to think there's a smaller amount of topics, but you have to have a very deep knowledge of those. So if the FE1s think a large amount of topics and kind of not surface level but semi-surface level of detail. So my first tip is to actually print the notes, and they're that thin, so they are 40 pages, but when you print them back to back and two A4s to 1, as in 2 to 1 ratio, from the PDF you get something like this, which is very handy. Okay. So the first thing when I learned something is, and this is basically what I'm saying here, is everything I did in the FE1, okay? So I had it very, very specific, and also I have no clutter. It's very minimalist way to learn. It's keeping sentences short, keeping it very colloquial, avoiding legal speak as much as possible, and also I don't put in any unnecessary detail. So how I actually learn it is, and so you can follow me along here, is, so I'll go, okay, forming a legally binding contract, an offer comes in the part of an agreement, which is offer and acceptance, right? So that means down the way I'm going to explain acceptance, so I can already preempt that. Okay, so then I know, for example, that the first part is offer, so I'll go like 1 plus 2. That makes sense to me. Okay, so background is just by way of context, okay? And I'm not too worried about that because I don't really need to learn that off by heart. It'll just give me a bit of background. But then here things start to get serious because I'm talking about minimum requirements. So I use language like clear and unambiguous, and then I say things like bilateral offer and unilateral offer that are already underlined for me. That makes sense. And then I come down to 2 cases. And remember, case law always backs up a principle, okay? So here the principle is the offer must clearly be an offer. Now you can see here, sometimes I give you facts and sometimes I don't. When I don't give you facts, or whether I do, it doesn't really matter. I really want you to look up the cases, right? So what I want you to do then is actually here in the margin where there's space, like put Clifton and then put Gibson. And then we're going to go and we're going to look them up, and we're going to put 3 key words for each. Okay, so you'll see what I've done here. I've looked up both cases, and I find lawteacher.net very good. And actually there's also a YouTube video about Gibson v Manchester from an English lady. But so, like, just to give you an example of how I remember it now. So Clifton was an offer to sell an estate, and the communication said, we are prepared to offer you the estate and you can do your own due diligence on it, but it was held not to be a definite offer because there was no price or commercial terms in it. Actually, I may write that down there as well, but and the same kind of, it's the same thing happened in Gibson. They're actually very similar. And here it was Manchester Corporation selling council houses to people, and they had a system whereby they would sell them by preparing a document which set out that it was not an offer, but they were prepared, kind of like this one up here, to offer a house to somebody, and that was held to be an invitation to treat, because again there was no commercial terms, no price, etc. It was it was too it wasn't specific enough to amount to an offer. And you remember back up here, the offer needs to be clear and unambiguous as to the terms, and that's essentially what we're missing here. And then the third step I do then to try and remember the principle is, I look at these two cases, Clifton and Gibson, and I'm like, how the hell will I remember this? So what I do is I try and link it to some part of my life, and immediately it strikes me that there is a way I can remember these cases, and that is this is just random, right? But there's like two hotels I can think of. One's the Cliff House Hotel and the other is the Gibson, and I'm just going to think of hotels. And how am I going to remember hotels? I don't know, but I'll just write it down, for example here, like hotels. And when I look back at my notes, I'll be like, okay, they have names that sound like hotels, and that's how I'm going to remember the case name. When I end up not wanting to read, especially on a computer, or not read text anymore, what I'll do is I'll listen to myself reading my notes, and that way it's going into my head and I'm remembering the story, but I'm not going blind reading these things anymore. So then, once I feel pretty confident in my knowledge of the fundamental principles of whatever legal subject I'm attacking, I go to the exam papers. And obviously for chapter 1, offer and acceptance, I've had to break this up into I've had to break up the exam questions into offer and acceptance, consideration, and stop. If I was studying EU law, I would also be looking up the cases on the European Commission's website, and then I would be tabbing and highlighting the relevant section in my Blackstones. If I was studying Companies Act, I would, well, this one isn't tabbed that great anymore, it just has the schedules because I've been using that in practice, but when I was doing my FE1s, this was all tabbed with all my favourite sections, lol. No, but seriously, you can still see where I've highlighted the bits that came up in my notes. So if you have this beside you, I love my Companies Act. We've been together for 4 years now. Yeah, 4 years. Since it became enacted on the 1st of June 2015. Best act ever. I'm so sad. Anyway, I had this all tabbed, and I was no worry. When I went into that exam, I was like, I'm going to slay because I know this so well. And saying like, this is what worked for me. I did get high results from my method, but then equally there's people out there who got also high results from their methods. I'm just telling you what worked for me. Yeah, and thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Tell your friend, tell your mom, tell your granny, tell your dad, tell anyone you know who has any half interest in law to get involved in the Law Hero movement, because law is for everybody, not just lawyers. Okay, thank you very much. Bye bye.